Oh hey Smithy, can I learn some new attacks?
Well, do what you want, I'm not in control of that.
But my friend in Kimura says it's just a thing that the weapons can do there.
Well, your friend in Kimura probably trains harder than you.
Yeah, well, training is so boring.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages,
When it comes to the Monster Hunter games, weapons are a massive deal. Unlike many RPGs, you don't swap weapons all the time, swap movesets occasionally. There just are 14 weapons in these games, and while you can change to other ones within those categories to upgrade your stats, the movesets are static, and each has a bit of their own personality as a result. That said, a major important thing was added to the series in Monster Hunter Rise that I absolutely love, and it flipped this on its head. Switch Skills. This system sort of revolutionized the game when it comes to the weapons. It gave you choices that could change your very moveset. Some of them a little bit smaller, giving weapons an alternate option to their draw attack, something like that, just a way to have personal choice on a small part of your gameplay. But others much larger and more noticeable, like Longsword being able to completely change which spirit combo it used, from one with little movement and horizontal angles to one that allowed you to reposition in the middle and had more vertical angles. Of course, this system is intrinsically tied to Silkbinds currently, as a lot of switch skills exist to just let you choose between Silkbinds themselves. And in Sunbreak we went from having 3 switch skills to a whole 5, one of them with 3 options. 5 parts of your moveset that you could individually choose to have over the other choices. And we also got the switch skills scroll system, which lets you move between 2 different sets of switch skills back and forth however much you want in the middle of a hunt. Personally, I love this system as a whole, which makes me ask the question, what will happen to it in the next Monster Hunter game, in the 6th gen? Originally in Rise, it was important, but somewhat minor, only having 3 options per weapon sort of made it quite tame as a whole in comparison, and while moving that up to 5 switch skills in Sunbreak is a big deal, I'd argue that the biggest deal was adding the ability to swap between scrolls at will. Generally speaking, mechanics are added in every Monster Hunter game, and some stay into future games, while others are left behind. Silkbinds are something that I think should definitely stay in Rise and Sunbreak without carrying on to future games, because regardless of how fun they are to use, they are sort of a massive game-defining trait of these specific games. And generally, the larger the system is, the more unique effect that it has on the gameplay, the less likely it is to stick around, as this gives each game its own special feeling compared to the others. So in my opinion, Silkbinds are definitely staying here, but what about switch skills?
I want them!
Yeah, I definitely think that the switch skill system should continue in some way, shape, or form. In essence, the concept of this mechanic is just to allow you to personalize your experience even further. After all, your first choice is which weapon you want to use, but once you have that, switch skills make this even more special for each person. You could have 4 different people using the same weapon in a hunt, and each one having a different switch skill setup in general, which gives them a different moveset. It totally adds to the feeling that you are your own hunter, that each different hunter has their own path, their own experience, their own training, and of course it makes sense as a result of this that different people using the same weapon could come up with different moves that they would use with them. In the end, the only negative of this system really is that some switch skills were just sort of upgrades over the base options. Water Strike for Hammer being an extremely great example. The move this replaces is extremely unimportant, and Water Strike itself is a parry that can lead into some of your strongest attacks. As a result, it is sort of just pointless to ever not choose Water Strike. I understand that at the end of the day, it's nearly impossible to have it so one isn't better than the other in some way, but this is just an example of it being a massive chasm between the 2 options that could never hope to be overcome. In a perfect world, switch skills would either be a choice between 2 things that have minor differences from each other, or even more ideally, things that are balanced extremely similarly, so that it genuinely just becomes a personal choice of what you prefer, or at least it becomes a question of what monster you are fighting, inviting you to think a little bit harder about each encounter you enter by choosing the correct switch skill for the fight. Another fun way to do this are any that completely change the way that a weapon plays in a base function. Not necessarily like a whole new weapon, but more so that it changes the way you think about making builds for it. It changes the big pop moment of a weapon, the big slam, ones that completely justify different styles of set building within the same weapon, but again, something like this is sort of particularly hard to balance around.
You're spinning a lot of plates there, sweetheart.
So with that said, should this system continue into the next Monster Hunter game? Yeah, I believe so, but the question is more how. Personally, I think the switch skill swapping system is just a little bit too much, so I think that part should probably stay in Rise and Sunbreak. In the future, I think we should retain the ability to have some personalization in our movesets, but it should have to be planned and thought through, something that you choose before each hunt rather than something that you can swap to on the fly. There also has to be a relatively tight balancing between the options that we have available, and more than anything this means that we probably need less options to make it easier to manage. And so I generally think that we should only have a couple of switch skills per weapon, but make them impactful enough that changing the switch skill can lead to totally new playstyles available for your weapon of choice. Almost like adding in a bunch of new weapons without actually having to do that completely. Change a main aspect of the weapon, give Hammer the option to not charge their attacks anymore and give them something that balances that out to somehow work. Give Switch Axe the ability to permanently be in axe mode and still be strong or something like that. Just make things totally funky. In this way we can have only a couple of switch skills feel like totally unique experiences for every weapon that they're on. And I think that this is one of the bright shining stars of Rise and Sunbreak. The switch skills. When they work, they feel absolutely amazing. They add a lot of depth and choice to your weapon and builds. When they don't work, it sort of sucks. But we can make that work out by just having less of them, so the choices can be more refined. They have more time to work it out and make sure that they are balanced. One idea that I had to keep a similar system in another way is to tie certain unique moveset changes to certain weapon trees. Like if you had a Nargacuga weapon, for example, it swaps a move out. The move would be stronger than what it replaced, but the weapon itself would be slightly weaker than the best ones, the other options. A trade-off that in theory could be relatively balanced in a complete build, but it adds a bunch of uniqueness to everything. And while I do think this idea would make weapon choice feel a bit more important, it would sadly make things a little bit more restrictive as well. If you like this style of gameplay, you would have to use this weapon, and so I don't really think that I like that all that much after having thought about it in deeper sense. But I bring it up anyways, mostly to say that there are other ways for this system to persist. It doesn't have to literally be the switch skill system as we know it right now, the way that it is in Rise and Sunbreak. But I think that Capcom should absolutely continue to include moveset altering choices for our weapons in future Monster Hunter games. You could even make it something like decorations, similarly to that system but weapon specific. Every weapon would have its own slot allowance and each altered attack would have its own cost to go into those slots. A high tier weapon might only have one slot, so only allowing a slight change from the base moveset, but go a tier down and you could have 3 slots, something like that. There are plenty of ways that the system could be done that aren't just your standard choose between these two options type of thing. That said, I do really like the system as it is right now. I don't see any issue with it continuing into future games as what it already is, minus the switch skill scroll swapping part that is a little bit oppressive, but knowing that the Monster Hunter team, they like to switch things up, and I think it is entirely possible to keep the soul of the switch skill system while changing up how it works on the inside. All in all, I just love the way that switch skills work as a base thing. I love the way that it lets each hunter have their own unique playstyle, even to a slight amount, an individual personality that you can actively see when watching them in combat. I think it adds depth both to our personal choices and to multiplayer hunts, seeing multiple people with the same weapon using different moves as they fight. It's all just fun, and what matters more than fun at the end of the day in a video game. What do you all think? Should switch skills stay into the next Monster Hunter entry? Should the system be exactly as it is, or should it change a bit? Should it change significantly? What do you think? Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.